Welcome to Our Town, a 30-minute podcast brought to you by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks.
This is Our Town, and this is Andy Ockershausen, and I have a great sense of something important here today for our show and our town, and that's to meet with someone that I never thought I'd meet with in a show, a homeless person who I think is very important to this city and to our town. And thank you for being here. We got a lot to talk about, so I want to get started. She has a great laugh, a very smart man. She's a smart woman, and she lives in a shelter.
That's right.
How long have you been in a shelter?
A little over 3 years.
That's incredible. Now, tell me about your early years. You're a local girl. You grew up and were born in Forestville,
Yes.
Maryland. Went to school there.
Yes.
Went to high school in Maryland.
Right.
What high school?
Suitland.
And you had a wonderful life in Suitland, and you graduated, right?
That's true. Yes.
And I know you're very, very fluent in math. I don't know whether to be fluent or efficient, but I know that. And then you moved to North Carolina.
Yes.
And got involved in the government of the United States. Were you working for the Air Force or for Uncle Sam?
I was working for Air Force, Uncle Sam, DOD. I was at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base for 4.5 years.
In Goldsboro, North Carolina?
Yes.
And you did some work in Jacksonville, North Carolina also?
Yes, I was down there for about 15 years during the 90s and early 2000s.
Wow. And you were a civil service?
Yes.
Well, that shows me that you must have a lot of talent, and you still end up coming back to Washington. Why didn't you stay in North Carolina?
There were a few issues when I worked for the government. I ended up in my early years working at the commissary, I got promoted ahead of my peers, and I was 18, 19 when I started. By the time I was 22, I was promoted above my peers, and they were 40-something, and I think they held it against me. And they thought, evil thoughts, thought maybe I had worked...
Something special to get promoted.
Right. Something special, exactly.
But that's not unusual in business, and it's whether in government or life. And even in the broadcast business, there are people who I had an age problem when I started, because I started at the bottom, and I got promoted, and I was in charge of people who I had worked for. And it's difficult to do, and you've done that. But that caused you problems. So.
Yes. Eventually, during the 90s, I was working for the government still. Thought I was doing good. Every time they asked me to do something, I always went above and beyond. I was always, given a good pat on the back. Performed. Everything came out glowing. They were happy with everything. I would fix things for people that were well above my pay grade level. And like I said, they always called on me to help them out. And I always, came to and thought, sooner or later I'll get rewarded. And then they started giving me a hard time at work and said that you had to be courteous. You couldn't be discourteous more than twice in a year. And they were getting on me for saying hello too sickening sweet. And after that, it went to, I giggled about it, and it was like, why am I laughing? And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I thought,
didn't laugh, you'd cry.
What's going? Yes, exactly. So I ended up filing an EEO complaint because he was a male. There was 2 civilians, and I was a female. He said he put the same element in his performance appraisal as was in mine, so I wouldn't think that anything. But he was walking around cussing and carrying on, and to me, if you cuss and carry on, that's discourteous. So I just could never figure out who was identifying discourteousness and how it was being identified.
And you just couldn't get along with that system.
Right. So they just kept picking on me little by little.
But when you came back to Washington, you were still civil service.
No, I ended up leaving there in 2005, 2006. I left the government. And I had filed EEO complaints, gone through process, and I had won a case, and I got a promotion out of it, and back pay, and I had gotten compensatory damages. They had to pay my lawyers. And then everything started over again. And I thought, all right, they're just trying to chase me out. I can't go through this again. My health was endangered. I was sleepless. I had anxiety. I had irritable bowel syndrome. I had just a bunch of different issues. And I thought, I need to take care of myself. And I quit working. I lost 150 pounds. I got off all the medication I was on. And I ended up losing my house. And
Where was the house? In Washington?
Jacksonville.
Oh, Jacksonville, North Carolina.
And I had called some friends, and they came down and picked me up, and then I stayed with them for a year, and then they asked me to leave. The time was up. I don't know what I was supposed to do, so I ended up
with a shelter.
And the shelter eventually
in D.C.
In D.C.
And you obviously ran into a lot of people in the same position you were, had been through part of life, but couldn't sustain it, so they went to the shelter. Is that correct?
There's 100 different women in a shelter. There's 100 different stories. And I mean, I found that out real fast. I ended up crying the first 2 weeks. I didn't understand what was going on. But you learn to, start helping one another.
Right. You reach out to one another, you're helping. And the government is there, of course, but that is a problem in itself, the government employees, because they're just going through the motions. They're not into it as a career. They just have a motion. Now, you're supported by D.C. government or Uncle Sam? Who handles your food stamps, for instance?
The food stamps, I think it's D.C. that handles the food stamps. HUD establishes all the shelters, the federal HUD. They pay for all the shelters, from what I can understand. Like I said, I'm just new at learning this. When Jim Graham had his meeting about the closing of the CC&V shelters, right. I attended that, and I learned a lot of players and learned who was in charge of what, but it's still a little bit confusing about where all the money comes from, who's in charge of what. But DHS in the city monitors the shelters.
Did they close the shelter that Jim Graham had
No.
And they wanted to move one up in Northwest, I know, on Wisconsin Avenue. There was some controversy about that. I don't know whether it was there's a difference between a men's shelter and a woman's shelter, correct?
Yes. I don't know.
There's no co-ed shelters.
Not for single people. Now, there's family shelters. I guess it's husband, wives, and children. But if you were I had met one lady that was married, and her husband couldn't be in a family shelter because they didn't have any kids.
Right.
But so he stayed in the men's shelter, she stayed in the female shelter. And then...
but if you have children, you can live together with the child, or children.
From what I understand.
Right. And how many women's shelters are there in D.C.?
I'm not exactly sure. I just know of the one that closed that we were in. It was run by the same people as another one, and then we moved to a new one. And I know DC General's out there, but everything's fluid right now because they're still opening and closing some.
What do you do about your medical needs?
The government has the Unity Clinic right beside the CC&V shelter that was at 425 Second Street, and I go down there. And they have a little clinic inside our shelter now that's only open Monday and Wednesday morning.
Right.
But if you
that's for the people that are in that shelter, correct?
Right. But if you get sick after that hours, you have to either go back to the Unity Clinic or go to an urgent care or wherever. But the government makes sure that you get on some sort of insurance to take care of you.
Well, do you do that with a card system, or you do it by the honor system? I mean, why would the clinic help you unless you had proof that you're in a shelter, right?
Yeah, right. They know that you're in a shelter, and they have to. They said they have to provide free insurance or free medical assistance to us. I don't know what the ruling is, the specifics, but so they provide, and they know you live in the shelter. They know where your address is, and then once we move, they're still covering us.
Well, how many women are in your shelter in a group? You don't have rooms, correct? You're in a sort of like a cabin of some kind within the shelter?
A dorm. Yeah,
a dorm.
There's 213. The fifth floor right now is for the single. They have single rooms. They're for women that are over 62 years old, and they're on the fifth floor, and they can stay in during the day. The third and fourth floor are temporary shelter, and they have 18 months in order to transition out of there and move into their own place. They're supposed to have people called advocates work for them that are helping either find a job or help them hook up with their place to live, and they go over different things in their life, whether they need financial aid or whatever, assistance figuring out their finances. And then the first two floors are what they call low barrier, and low barrier accepts anybody. Somebody can be using drugs, they can come into a low barrier. Once you come inside the building, you have to be following the rules.
The rules of the building, of the shelter.
Right. So, and if we
they must have strict rules about drugs on premises, do they?
Right. No drugs are allowed to be brought into the building.
But you can go outside and do it.
Right. Exactly.
Now, how about you mentioned something about a commissary. Is there a commissary in place where you can buy food and
No, not inside the shelter. We have to use our food stamp card, or if people have cash, whatever they do, go buy their food. The low barrier, we're not allowed to store our food overnight. So if I go buy my dinner, I have a sensitive stomach, and some food disagrees with me. So I usually have my Plan B with me every night, and I bring it in, fix it, eat, and that way I can go to bed early too, because it takes too long for the food to digest. So I go out every day, buy my food, what I'm going to eat, and then bring it in, fix it, and then go to bed. Go take my shower and go to bed.
And what are some of the rules? And then I know there's some rules about occupancy, correct? You have to be out of the building at a certain time. What other kind of rules do you
You're
see?
out by 7. You have to check in between 4 and 7. That's for the low barrier. I'm not sure what the other floors have to do.
Right.
After you check in between 4 and 7, you can turn around and go right back out the door. And then you have to be in by 10. You're not supposed to they have quiet hours. Start at 11 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. And then you can start taking showers at 5 o'clock in the morning till 6:45. But we have to be out the door by 7. So I don't know how some of those women do that. And then...
do they ring a bell to empty the building, or you do
no,
it on...
it's just probably...
You have to watch your own clock.
And they might walk through. The building's kind of small.
Right, and how about, you say the top floors, so when they're 60 years old, they can stay there all day, over 60.
Right, 62.
62, I
right.
beg your pardon. But everybody else has to clear out on those hours.
Right, they can have reasonable accommodations. If they're ill or have a medical issue, they can stay inside. But they have to bring a doctor's note and get it approved, So, or if you're waiting for the clinic to open, you can stay inside. Or now they have activities there. And they have activities down in the basement. They'll have game day, or they'll have meditation.
They're trying to get some entertainment.
Right, and so if they stay in for that, then they'll serve them lunch. And if the heat alert is on, in the summertime, it has to be 95 with the heat index, or sometimes they include the air quality, and then we're allowed to come in. They call it the alert system. Right. And in the wintertime, it's 32 with the wind chill.
Yeah, what happens when the weather's bad, when it rains and snows? Is there a certain level of rain that you snow?
No. In fact, I brought that up when I first got here. I said, if we were in an animal shelter, they wouldn't put the animals outside in the pouring rain. And I have a rollator. It's the walker with a seat on it.
That's right.
And I cannot carry an umbrella. I'm dangerous with an umbrella. If I have the short umbrella and the nice little mini umbrella, I'm too tall and it's like hitting me in the head. If I have the large one, when it's not raining, it's going across the sides from one side of my rollator to the other side, and I'm hitting people as I go down the street, and I'm trying to be careful. So, it's walking in the rain is hard for me. A poncho
and walking in the snow is impossible.
Yes, but last year I got out in the middle after the snowstorm hit, and I got out and walked down the middle of the street, and nobody bothered me.
This information blows my mind, and I'm going to take a break here now, and we'll be back. And this is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our wonderful restaurants at Washington Harbor. Tony and Joe's, the best seafood in the city. Nick's Riverside Grill, wonderful chops and steaks. Wonderful views of the Kennedy Center, Roosevelt Island, Roslyn skyline. Spectacular. 2 bars outside right on the water. Fabulous food. For dinner reservations, call 202-944-4545. It's really a great experience. We'll see you down at Tony and Joe's or Nick's Riverside Grill.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
Speaking with a lady that we have been fascinated by, who's living in a homeless shelter in Washington and has been there for 3 years, and has told us some stories that we are really, really quizzical about. And one of the things that I want to know is, on the bad weather, as you point out, there are some hotels that open their doors to homeless people for the lobby, and that to me is great. And that goes on all the time?
All the time, even during the nice weather. They'll let us slide in, and there's places that give away ice to us. I go in with a cup. I have to buy my soda in the grocery store. It's not cold, because cold ones are too expensive. So I buy a regular soda, take a cup in. Some places even give you the cup, put the ice in it, and then you make your own cold soda. But the hotels let us use the computers and they don't say anything, and some places, other places let us use computers.
Heat, you can go in and cool off, and bad weather, you can go in and relax.
Right.
Get away from the weather. Have you kept up to your mathematics, or are you doing it on a computer now? Because I know you grew up as somewhat of a math whiz, I'm told.
I'm fascinated. I love math. I don't know why. I've always liked it, and I guess because there's one answer. It's not, going to be like somebody taking apart a story and somebody saying what's the this or what's the that of the story. No, the math has one answer. It's a concrete answer. But I find puzzles. The Epic Times comes out every week. That has a whole page of puzzles in it, and I've sat there and played with them. And I usually try and keep it for the weekend, but the minute it comes out on Thursday, I'm just like,
wonderful!
Oh, no, puzzles! Something to do.
Right. Work it out. Now tell me about I was fascinated by the food stamp. How you get food stamps. I didn't know. I don't think anybody in the audience ever really concentrated on that. I thought maybe you got something in the mail.
It's like a credit card. It's a card. It has your name on it. You have a PIN number. You have to use it in a store that's at EBT. I don't know what EBT stands for, but you can't buy ready-made food. Like I can't go to Walmart and buy something over there in the hot deli. I have to buy regular food
that you prepare.
So you either microwave it or whatever. But sometimes they have like ready-made sandwiches, like in some of the little corner stores that you can turn around and buy.
And they'll take your card.
They'll take our card.
How do you know how much is on that card?
On the receipt you get, it tells you your balance. And
where do you get the receipt? By mail? Or
no, the receipt from the grocery store. From the grocery store. And it says to keep them and keep track and make sure check it and don't give out your PIN number.
Right.
So.
Because you get a certain amount each month. And the government just forwards that to you automatically.
Right, by your first letter of your last name. So DC,
Right.
First of the month it's AB and maybe C, and the second day it's something else. So.
How about your medical needs? Is that on a card or is that a system? At the first shelter I was at down at CCNV, the women's shelter beside the main one, we could go down to the Unity Clinic. They supported us. And once they supported us, when we moved to the new shelter, they put a little mini clinic in there. It's very tiny. It's open Monday and Wednesday mornings from like 8 or 9 to like 11. But if you get sick other than that, and the dentist is still down at the other clinic at 2nd and E Street. And I've been going down there on a routine basis lately to see the dentist, and I saw the foot doctor yesterday down there. She comes in once a month, and they'll make referrals out. So if you go in there and they can't handle it, they can draw blood in there. They can test for certain things, but they'll send you out to a referral. But you don't have anything you don't have a card or anything like you do with stamps.
No,
they just have your number.
They have our number for the clinic. They just know us, and everybody, they've seen us while I walk in there. They know our names, and then the government puts you into some sort of medical insurance, and now I have an insurance card with that. So when I get a referral out to one of my providers, I have to usually show that in an ID.
What you have suggestions? I'm sure you do. But what could the shelters, as a form, do to improve themselves? What is it that you see that needs improvement, and how would you suggest they do that? Because everybody's going to say we want it better. But how?
I think by not dismissing our complaints would be one. The shelter I was at before, it was kind of like, they would just try and brush it off, or that's not happening, or then you would go to a little bit higher up and you never heard back from people. You weren't seeing results. And I have a very good contacts now because I write pretty often, and I have, I think, established a good line of communication with people, and they know my track record. I provide them factual data.
How to improve whatever it is being done at the
what's
shelter.
going on, as far as a complaint is going on. They know me, and then they investigate or whatever they do, and you can pretty much see immediate results.
Right. But in the long haul, is that's probably instant results, but in the long haul, what do you suggest? I mean, is it location? Is it building? Is it what do you think the shelters could do in the long haul to improve?
Right now the women have trouble with transportation. The New York Men's Shelter, the United Planning Organization, has a shelter van. You'll see it driving around town. Shelter transport van, and they provide them transportation up to Sums, which is 1st and O Street Northwest. They also drive them up to MLK Library, but the women that had stayed down there at 425 2nd Street either had to walk to some day programs, some women's day programs like N Street Village, and they had to walk to MLK, they have to walk to Sums, and they never got transportation. The same thing happens now. Right now we don't have laundry services. The women have to walk over to Sums from where we are at First and O, take a van over to Adams Place, Northeast, and then
all the way to Northeast
to do laundry, and then the van doesn't come pick them, and it's over in like a warehouse district somehow. There's not good bus transportation there, and then the van will bring them back over and drop them off at MLK, and then they'll have to walk back to the shelter with their laundry. So, doing laundry right now...
They make it very difficult.
Yes.
Without that transportation.
Well,
would a van dedicated to that shelter be a big help then?
That would. With the United
Like a UPO does.
Right. To drive them back and forth to N Street Village. They're making the women use their own money or funds, however they get around, to either do laundry or to get back and forth from different places.
But they never supply you with cash, is that correct?
Oh, no.
It's always a form, either sign your name in the shelter, in the hospital, or your card. The little card they give you, which is the...
For
cash.
medical insurance?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the way you have to be. Now, I understand from time to time there are donations that come to the shelter from various sources, and what happens to these donations is something that's been concern of you and the other women in your shelter.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right. The last place we lived at, there were many, many stories, and I got to watch many different things. One night, somebody dropped something off for Mother's Day. It was some chocolate, and one woman came in that I know. She came in late from working, and she saw the 2 boxes come in. Another lady lived down the hall. She peeked out her room, saw the 2 boxes, but we never got the stuff for Mother's Day. Last year at Christmas time, one of the churches that used to come and assist with dinner, they brought tall bottles of body wash, and one of the staff said she was going to put it in small bottles. Nobody ever saw the small bottles. Those boxes of body wash went immediately to the staff office, and I asked for one that week, and it's like, no, we're putting them in. But see, people have allergies. You can't do that to people. You can't take something from a tall bottle and put it into a smaller bottle and not know what's in it. So it was bad to even think they were going to get away with that. But we've eventually got people to pay attention to what's going on in the shelters. But now N Street Village, who are in charge of our shelter now, they accept donations at their flagship office. And then, I've looked on their website, and they want small bottles. The women in the shelter want tall bottles. We don't want to have to go to the office every night and ask for shampoo or body wash. We want the tall bottles. If churches come out, or whoever wants to come out to the park and pass them out, we'll go outside, because they don't want people outside of our building. And the building itself doesn't accept donations right there.
I got it.
So that's their rule for the staff, that they don't accept donations right there, which it has to go through the other.
Well, in the long haul, that might be better, because then if it's a central location, they can make the distribution. If they have to go to each shelter, they would know. Then one shelter may get all the goodie, and the others may not get any. So that's part of the distribution system. We know there's a controversy going on in Northwest Washington, and that is about a new shelter would be moved from somewhere to come up on Wisconsin Avenue in an area that may be very bad for the shelter people because of lack of transportation, lack of a lot of things. Have you heard about this controversy? But you wouldn't be interested in. You wouldn't be involved in that.
Right. It's a family shelter, from what I understand. They're trying to break up DC General and put a shelter in each ward.
The mayor.
Right. And so it is. Well, they're going to have to figure it out. There's some things they don't think about until after the fact, and then, like right now, our laundry situation. Some of those women have not done laundry. I've not seen them walk out with the laundry, and they're worried about bugs, and they wouldn't at first let us take water back into the room because they were worried water would draw bugs, but dirty clothes will draw bugs too. So it was like, hello, and you don't have place for us to do our laundry. And it's like, people, we don't have money. We don't have soap money. You don't have transportation money. So there's a lot of factors in there.
You're just a fountain of information. We appreciate that so much. And we're going to take a break now. This is Our Town.
Are you retired or soon will be? Is your will up to date? Don't want to leave a mess for your family to clean up. I'm attorney Mike Collins, the guy who sends you those invitations to my estate planning seminar. I'll teach you how to save taxes, avoid probate, Protect your heirs from lawsuits, bankruptcy, even the divorce court. Keep your money in your family with our innovative Reservoir Trust. Watch the mail for your invitation. Tuition's free when you register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
We've had a wonderful conversation. It's been great. And what if you had a chance to sit down with Mayor Bowser, would you have a list of recommendations for her to pass on to her people about the shelters and what goes on?
Well, it's always something every week. It's something different every week, and I make sure I send out an email to whoever I can about whatever topic that is that week and make sure it gets to the right people. I'll send it to 4, 5, 8 different people, sometimes 15. One time I sent it to all the DC Council, and I said, when you are building these new shelters, make sure that they're handicap accessible. You know, if you look at the generation of people down there at CCNV, there's a lot of people that can't get around. When we moved into this new place, there were no handicap buttons to push to open doors.
Wow.
So every time I open a door, I have to push across my thing. Now, eventually, it's probably going to pull out my back somehow. But the other night, we got a lady in the shelter in a wheelchair, and I noticed the bathroom door. This was just last night. They had stuck the wet door sign, those little yellow flimsy things, to hold the bathroom door open because she's in a wheelchair and she's missing part of her leg. I don't know how she's going to open that handle and open it up. So
she's not going to.
Somebody's got to come help her every time. So when they build these new shelters, especially the ones for the single, the ones for the family shelters will probably have a younger generation there. But I wrote to all the councilmen because I knew that they were putting something in everybody's ward. And
that was the plan. They wanted to move it.
So I'll make sure I send something out every week. Whenever there's something different, I send it to whoever I can. And usually I think I've got a pretty good track record with the people and provided them factual information in the past. They've checked on it. They know that, I'm straightforward. I sit there and just, sometimes I get responses back and sometimes I get thank yous back and sometimes I don't hear anything.
Well, that's not unusual.
But the last few days I've seen a change in one issue that I brought up just this past weekend. And, I appreciate the immediate response. It's not like I want it to fester or wait or, go on and to pull people in that to go to an administrative hearing and then find homeless people as witnesses. They're a transient area.
How many homeless people are there at this point? Do you have a grasp of how many women are in your shelter, for instance?
Our shelter has 213.
How many shelters are there?
I don't know.
For women?
I don't know.
There's some for couples, and there's shelters for men and shelters for women, correct?
There's shelters for men, there's shelters for women, there's shelters for family. But if it's just a husband and wife, I don't know if they have shelters for them.
I see. So they have to then split up.
They have to split up.
But if they have children, they can get in one shelter.
A family shelter, right.
A family shelter. So what other things would you want the city to do? Well, you mentioned transportation.
Transportation.
You need better help.
We need washing facilities. They're working on it, but I like our elevator was out when we first got to the place. It was a renovated, brand new building. I wrote to everybody. There's women going up and down the stairs with walkers, rollators, canes, bad knees. It's an older generation. You can't be going up and down the stairs. The elevator was breaking down. And I don't want to say every day, but it felt like every day.
Constantly.
Every other day,
right.
For sure. And then they finally got new circuit boards in, had everything redone. And in the last month and a half, maybe, it's been pretty good. So,
So somebody is paying attention to your emails.
Right.
And we mentioned a bus. You'd rather have buses. How about the placement? The placement of you're close to, supposedly these shelters are close to transportation. Is that true? You feel it's close enough?
Mine is. I like where I'm at because I've gotten used to that area and the people there know me, the places that I go to frequent during the day to stay out of the elements or, to go shopping at. I can walk in, the security guards know me. Hey, how you doing? They'll sit there and talk to me. How's everything going today? I'll take you to lunch or something. And they're very nice. People have gotten to know me and it's just.
I know the Iceman wants to hire you, right?
Yes.
That's important.
He just came along and saw me doing a crossword puzzle and says, I know you can work, but
You're
it's
smart.
like it's catching the bus and getting back and forth every day. It'd be hard.
It'd be difficult. I understand that. This has just been such a great eye-opening and ear-opening discussion, and we hope everybody that listens to this podcast knows that you're out there and you're working hard and you're doing your best, and this has been special for us, and I know how close you and Janice were growing up, and they still are, and we love you and want you to know that. And we're here for you 24/7, whatever we can do to help.
Okay.
This is Andy Ockershausen, and this is Our Town.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 1 with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town podcast episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. We welcome your comments and suggestions on how you like the show or who you'd like to hear from next. Catch us on Facebook at Our Town DC or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to WMAL Radio